Most people think mythical creatures came from pure imagination, but here's something wild. Many legendary beasts were inspired by real animals. Do you know those crazy monsters in ancient stories? They're not completely made up. Picture ancient sailors crossing vast oceans thousands of years ago. They spot something huge moving in the water, something they've never seen before. They rush home and tell everyone about this massive creature with tentacles as long as their ship. Years pass, the story spreads, and you suddenly have tales of the mighty Kraken, a colossal sea monster with tentacles that could wrap around a ship and drag it to the depths. But it gets even better. Traders would bring back strange animal parts from distant lands, like these massive spiral horns. Nobody knew they came from Arctic whales called narwhals, so what did people think? They must be from those magical one-horned horses everyone talks about, unicorns. These misunderstandings happened everywhere. When ancient Greeks found dinosaur fossils, they thought they belonged to giants and monsters. When medieval travelers described rhinos to people back home, their stories turned into legends of powerful beasts with magical powers. The craziest part? We're about to look at 11 real animals that sparked some of history's most famous mythical creatures. Trust me, the real stories behind these legends are even more fascinating than the myths themselves. 1. Narwhal and unicorn. Have you ever wondered why people paid fortunes for unicorn horns in medieval times? They were buying narwhal tusks. But here's the thing, almost no one knew that. These spiral tusks sold for 10 times their weight in gold. Kings and queens fought to own them, thinking they had magical powers. Back in medieval Europe, if you got sick, you'd probably end up drinking from a cup made from these unicorn horns. People truly believed these horns could cure any poison. Rich families would even dip these tusks in their drinks at fancy parties to show off. Talk about expensive table decorations. But how did whale teeth end up being sold as unicorn horns? Thank the Viking traders for that. These guys would hunt narwhals up in the freezing Arctic waters. But instead of telling everyone about these weird-looking whales with long tusks, they made up stories about magical horses. If you've never seen a narwhal and someone shows you this perfect spiral tusk, wouldn't you believe it came from something magical too? The best part is how detailed these unicorn stories got. Medieval doctors wrote entire books about unicorn horn medicine. They claimed these horns could cure everything from snake bites to the plague. Churches even kept them as treasures next to pieces of saints' bones. One narwhal tusk was so valuable that Denmark offered to buy an entire island using it as payment. The funniest thing? By the time people finally figured out these unicorn horns came from whales, they'd already spent centuries building this massive myth about magical horses. Talk about history's most successful marketing trick. 2. Manatee, mermaid. Want to know something funny? Even Christopher Columbus got fooled by manatees. In 1493, he wrote in his diary that he spotted 3 mermaids jumping out of the water, but then added they weren't as pretty as the stories said. No kidding, Christopher. You were looking at manatees. But let's back up a bit. Old-time sailors spent months at sea, mostly staring at endless water. Then they'd spot these strange animals swimming near their ships. Manatees have this weird habit of popping their heads up and cradling their babies like humans do. Plus, they've got these flipper-like arms they use to hold food up to their mouths. Mix that behavior with some seriously lonely sailors, and boom, you've got mermaid stories. The crazy part? These stories spread everywhere. You had sailors swearing they saw beautiful women with fishtails, but when you look at a manatee, well, they're basically sea potatoes with whiskers. These chunky animals can weigh up to 1,300 pounds. Not exactly the sleek mermaids you see in movies. But ancient sailors kept the stories going. They'd tell tales about magical singing that lured ships off course. Truth is, manatees do make these high-pitched whistling sounds to communicate. And since sound travels weirdly over water, sailors probably heard these noises and thought they were mysterious songs. These mermaid myths got so big that shiplogs from all over the world reported seeing them. Every culture started adding its spin to mermaid legends, from Caribbean waters to African coasts. It all started because some sailors couldn't distinguish between a mythical sea beauty and a chubby water mammal that just wanted to float around eating seaweed. 3. Giant squid, Kraken. The scariest monster in the ocean isn't something made up. It's real, and it's the giant squid. But ancient sailors didn't know that. When they saw these massive tentacles rising from the water, they thought they were facing the legendary Kraken, a monster so big it could pull entire ships underwater. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Giant squids can grow longer than a school bus. We're talking up to 43 feet. Their eyes alone are as big as dinner plates, the largest eyes of any animal on Earth. And those tentacles? They're covered in powerful suction cups with sharp teeth inside them. No wonder sailors freaked out when they saw these things. Norse sailors told stories about this massive creature that would grab their ships with dozens of arms. They weren't wrong. Giant squids attack their prey with tentacles, wrapping them around whatever they're hunting. The only difference? Real giant squids hunt whales, not ships. But check this out. These monsters fight epic battles in the deep ocean. Scientists have found giant squids with huge scars from fighting sperm whales. That's right. They battle with. When dead giant squids washed up on shores hundreds of years ago, people thought they were pieces of sea monsters. And in a way, they were right. The best part about the Kraken myth is that it turned out to be close to reality. Sure, giant squids can't sink entire fishing fleets like in the stories. But they're still one of the most impressive predators in the ocean. Scientists didn't even get a video of a live giant squid until 2006. That's how mysterious these creatures still are. 4. Rhinoceros. Karkadan. You won't find this in most history books, but ancient Persian traders sparked some wild stories about a beast called the Karkadan. When they first saw rhinos in India, they couldn't believe their eyes. But wait until you hear how their descriptions got twisted into something straight out of a fantasy story. Think about it. You're a trader from ancient Persia, and suddenly, you're face to face with this tank-like animal with armor-plated skin and a huge horn. You rush back home to tell everyone, but nobody believes you. So what happens? The stories get bigger and crazier with each retelling. The Karkadan started as a simple description of a rhinoceros, but stories turned it into this unstoppable monster. People claimed it could pierce elephants with its horns and lift them off the ground. Okay, rhinos do fight elephants sometimes, but they can't lift them like a forklift. In Middle Eastern folklore, the Karkadan got even more magical powers. They said its horn could purify poisoned water, and drinking from it could save your life. That part makes some sense. Rhinos use their horns to dig for water in dry riverbeds, helping other animals find clean water too. The craziest stories said the Karkadan was impossible to capture because it was too strong and smart. That's pretty close to reality. Try catching a 4,000-pound rhino with ancient hunting tools. Some Persian kings even kept rhino horns as treasures, thinking they had magical powers to detect poison in their food. Here's the wild part. These stories got so popular that Middle Eastern doctors prescribed powdered Karkadan horn as medicine. They were using ground-up rhino horn, but nobody knew that. The legend of the Karkadan got so big that people still wrote about this magical beast centuries after they figured out it was just a rhinoceros. 5. Monitor lizard. Dragons. Nobody expects dragons to be real, but monitoring lizards might change your mind. These massive reptiles, especially Komodo dragons, are living proof of where dragon myths came from. Trust me, the real facts about these animals are cooler than any made-up story. When ancient Chinese travelers first saw Komodo dragons, their minds were blown. This giant lizard can take down water buffalo, has toxic bacteria in its mouth that kills prey slowly, and flicks its tongue to smell the air, just like mythical dragons. They grow up to 10 feet long and can eat 80% of their body weight in one meal. That's like eating 100 hamburgers in one sitting. The coolest part? Monitor lizards match up with a lot of dragon myths. Those stories about dragons being super smart? Monitor lizards can count better than human babies and remember people who've been nice or mean to them. They even walk on their toes with their bellies off the ground. Just like dragons in Asian art, people noticed how monitors hang around water and climb trees in Chinese culture. Next thing you know, their dragons became these powerful creatures controlling rain and storms. Some monitors can even hold their breath for 30 minutes underwater, which explains all those sea dragon stories. But here's something that'll mess with your head. Monitor lizards fight by standing on their back legs and wrestling each other. Imagine seeing that thousands of years ago. No wonder people thought these things could stand up and breathe fire. The only part they got wrong was the fire breathing. But everything else about dragons? It came from watching these incredible animals in action. 6. Apes. Yeti. Bigfoot. Do you think finding Bigfoot is crazy? Well, scientists once thought gorillas were just myths too. When explorers first brought back stories of massive, powerful apes walking on two legs, nobody believed them. Sound familiar? It's the same thing happening with Bigfoot stories today. Check this out. Before anyone proved gorillas existed, people thought they were just tall tales from African travelers. These stories described huge, hairy beings that could rip trees apart and walk like humans. When scientists finally found gorillas in the 1800s, They realized all those crazy stories were true. The same thing happened in Asia. When people spotted orangutans in the forests, they told stories about mysterious forest people. These tales spread to the snowy mountains, where they turned into the legend of the Yeti. And in North America, Native Americans had been telling stories about giant, hairy forest creatures long before anyone came up with the name Bigfoot. Here's something wild. Almost every culture has stories about these mysterious ape men. Russia has the Almas, Australia has the Yowie, and China has the Yeren. And guess what? Most of these places had great apes living there thousands of years ago. We've found the fossils to prove it. Modern Bigfoot hunters love pointing out how many different cultures have these similar stories. They say it proves something's out there. But here's the twist. All these stories started because our ancestors did run into different kinds of apes we haven't discovered yet. After all, scientists still find new primate species today. And remember, people once laughed at gorilla stories too. 7. Elephant, Behemoth. The Bible talks about this massive creature called the Behemoth, a powerful beast that could shake the earth. Sounds made up, right? But what if I told you they were probably describing elephants in the most dramatic way possible? Think about this. You're living thousands of years ago and see this giant animal taller than your house, with a nose like a snake and teeth bigger than your arm. You've never seen anything like it. What would you write about it? That's exactly what happened when ancient people first met elephants. The Book of Job describes the behemoth as this huge animal with bones like bronze bars and legs like tree trunks. It says this creature could drink up entire rivers, and nothing on earth was stronger. Now swap behemoth with elephant in those descriptions, suddenly it all makes sense. But ancient people didn't stop there. They saw how elephants could knock down trees like toothpicks and crush anything. Stories spread about these incredible beasts, and each culture added their spin. Persians wrote about elephant armies that could destroy entire cities. Indians saw them as living versions of their gods. African tribes told stories about elephants being the first creatures on Earth. The crazy part? Some of these exaggerated stories weren't even that far off. An adult elephant can drink up to 50 gallons of water at once. That's like chugging 400 water bottles. They can knock down huge trees to get food, and their footsteps make the ground shake. So those ancient writers weren't exaggerating as much as we thought. 8. Octopus. Scylla. Old Greek stories warn about this terrifying monster called Scylla, a beast with 6 heads that snatched sailors right off their ships. But what were they seeing? It's probably just octopuses doing what octopuses do best, being super weird and scary smart. Most people don't know this, but octopuses are the ninjas of the ocean. They can squeeze through holes the size of a quarter, change color faster than you can blink, and solve puzzles better than some people can. Ancient sailors who spotted these creatures must have thought they were dealing with something out of a nightmare. The Greeks weren't wrong about Scylla grabbing people off boats. Real octopuses can reach up to 16 feet across, wider than a car is long. And those stories about multiple heads? When you see an octopus's arms rising out of the water at night, they look like separate creatures coming to get you. Here's something that would have freaked out ancient sailors even more. Octopuses climb onto boats sometimes. They'll crawl up anchor chains, slip through tiny cracks, and raid fishing catches. Scientists have caught them on camera planning escape routes and using tools. They're that smart. The Mediterranean Sea is full of these crafty creatures, and sailors back then had no clue what they were dealing with. Imagine being on a small wooden boat at night, and these long, snake-like arms suddenly start reaching over the side. Of course, you'll tell everyone about the monster with 6 heads that tried to eat your crew. The real animal is more impressive than the myth. Octopuses can open jars, solve mazes, and even recognize human faces. It makes you wonder what other monsters were misunderstood animals doing their thing. 9. Seal. Selkie. Next time you see a seal on the beach, remember this. Scottish and Irish people once thought these animals were magical humans in disguise. They called them Selkies, and the stories about them are wild. Do you know how seals can waddle awkwardly on land but swim like underwater acrobats? That's exactly what got this whole myth started. Ancient Celtic people would watch seals slip in and out of their skin-like coats when coming onto beaches. They started thinking these weren't just animals. They had to be magical people who could transform by taking their seal skin on and off. The truth about seals is mind-blowing. These animals come onto land to rest and care for their babies and are super careful about it. They post lookouts and have specific spots they return to, just like the Selkies in the old stories who had secret meeting places on shore. But here's the crazy part. Seals cry real tears and make weirdly human sounds. Their big dark eyes and whiskers can make them look almost like people. especially in the foggy Scottish weather. Mother seals are also super protective of their pups and will sing to them, just like the stories of Selkie mothers coming back to check on their human children. These stories got so popular that some Scottish families still claim they're descended from Selkies. They point to things like webbed toes or great swimming ability as proof. And it's not just Scotland. Similar stories about seal people pop up everywhere, from Iceland to Native American tribes. There must be something about those seal puppy eyes that makes everyone think there's more to these animals than meets the eye. 10. Dolphin. Dolphin riders of Apollo. The ancient Greeks weren't just making stuff up when they wrote about dolphins carrying people across the seas. These stories started because dolphins do some pretty unbelievable things, like saving people from drowning and protecting them from sharks. No magic is required. Ancient sailors wrote about Apollo, their sun god, turning himself into a dolphin and guiding ships to safety. Sounds like a myth, right? But real dolphins do guide ships through dangerous waters. They swim alongside boats and push stranded people to shore. Scientists have recorded thousands of cases of dolphins helping humans, and they're doing it just because they want to. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Dolphins remember people and come back to visit them years later. Greeks noticed this too. That's why they made it illegal to hurt dolphins. They thought the gods sent these animals. But the real reason dolphins help us is even cooler. They're super smart and naturally friendly. You won't believe this, but dolphins have names for each other. They use special whistles to call their friends. Greeks wrote about dolphins singing and playing music with their god, Apollo. They weren't wrong. Dolphins sing to each other and even have different accents, depending on where they're from. The Greeks painted dolphins on their coins, walls, and ships. They thought these animals brought good luck. But the best part is how many of their magical dolphin stories were true. Dolphins do form circles around people in danger to protect them from sharks. They play with boats just for fun. And yes, they do give people rides. Marine biologists always see it happening. 11. Tiger. Wendigo. Native Americans told scary stories about a monster called the Wendigo that hunted in the dark, but they might have been warning each other about something very real. Big cats like tigers and mountain lions that used to roam across America. Check this out. The Wendigo was described as this tall, skinny creature that would stalk people through the woods and could imitate human voices to trick its prey. Now, that's exactly what tigers and big cats do. They follow people for days, learning their habits. And some can make sounds like human cries for help. The stories said Wendigos were always hungry and would eat anything they could catch. Tigers act the same way. They're what scientists call opportunistic hunters. That means they'll eat whatever they can get their paws on, and they're good at finding prey when food gets scarce. Here's something freaky. Native Americans said Wendigos were most active during winter storms when people couldn't see or hear them coming. Guess when big cats prefer to hunt? During storms and at night, when their prey can't spot them. They even follow the same trails humans use, just like the stories said Wendigos would stalk paths between villages. The really smart part about these stories? They kept people safe. When Native Americans told kids about the Wendigo, they taught them to watch out for predators. Those warnings about not going out alone at night or during storms? That's exactly when big cats are most dangerous. And the stories about Wendigos being impossible to outrun? Well, try outrunning a tiger. It won't end well. These weren't just scary campfire tales. They were survival guides wrapped in monster stories. Conclusion. So, think twice the next time someone tells you mythical creatures are pure fiction. From narwhals turning into unicorns to octopuses becoming six-headed monsters, nature's way crazier than anything we could make up. The best part? We're still discovering new animals today. Scientists find weird deep-sea creatures that look straight out of science fiction. Just imagine what ancient sailors would have thought if they saw some of these things. Our ancestors weren't crazy. They were just trying to make sense of an amazing world they didn't fully understand. And honestly, some real animals are even more incredible than the myths they inspired. Which of these animals surprised you the most? Comment below and tell me if you know about any of these connections. And here's a fun question. What modern animals might inspire myths 1,000 years from now? If you enjoyed learning these wild facts about mythical creatures and their real-world inspirations, hit that subscribe button for more videos like this one. Trust me, there are plenty more crazy animal stories to tell.